period of less than 2 months, Cassandra had kicked over the traces and pulled all stops. By persistently accusing Johnny of countless personal inadequacies, some real, some imaginary, Cassandra had cunningly unloaded the blame and responsibility for her own misbehavior, including the possession and use of marijuana, at the feet of her bewildered young husband. Paralyzed by a guilt complex, young Adams stood by and helplessly looked on, while his young wife started down the long road the junkies call the Root. Johnny's employer was the first to notice the change that had come over young Adams. On the 14th of October, Johnny was given the day off and sent home to resolve the problem that was interfering with his concentration at work. An overturned trash bucket. The dog, perhaps. In among the tin cans and food cartons, Johnny found half a dozen or more small bottles of a type commonly used by druggists when filling prescriptions. Seconal, sleeping pills. And this was the dreamer. The junkies call them goofballs, and Cassandra was about as goofed up on Seconal as the physical limitations of the human body can stand. Young Adams knew that Cassandra had been issued a prescription for sleeping pills on several occasions, but he became alarmed when he noticed that the issue dates on the labels of 6 of the bottles were all within a period of less than 1 week. It was apparent that Cassandra had now added forgery to a fast-growing list of indiscretions and misdemeanors. He was even now trying to top that list with suicide. There was another bottle of Seconal hidden behind the incinerator. Booked on a 502, resulting from intoxication created by stimulants of an undetermined origin, Cassandra was held for a short period of observation in the police ward of City Hospital. When medical investigation proved inconclusive, she was then released into the custody of her husband and parents. A telephone call from the Lee home in the middle of the night on November the 2nd wrote Cassandra's name on the police blotter for the second time, this time as a missing person. In the meantime, the name of Russell Packard had come to our attention as a suspect in a small-time dope ring. The organization was thought to be operating out of the east end of town. via motorcycle messenger service a la Packard. When we learned of Cassandra's connection with Packard, we tracked the girl down and put a close tail on her. From then on, Cassandra was officially my problem. We were tailing Cassandra in the belief that her trail might lead us to Packard, and consequently into the dope ring's operational headquarters. By late afternoon, it began to look as though our hunch might pay off. She was blazing a trail right into the east end of town. The lead was just beginning to look promising that afternoon when the trail came to a dead end at one of those high-type flop houses down along Skid Row. When I saw Cassandra buttonholing a couple of junkies lounging around the hotel lobby, I realized that she was trying to get a lead on Packard herself. When I walked in, the girl was still asking questions, so I obliged her by answering a few. I told her I'd recently bought some junk from a guy by the name of Packard at a little joint over near 3rd and Main. Offered to drive me there for a look-see. Packard, of course, wasn't there. But the fake lead I'd thrown Cassandra's way bought me into her confidence. When she got back into the car, she told me she had a couple of hunches she'd like to run down. Wondered if I'd mind driving her around a couple of other places. These other places she had in mind were some of the sleaziest joints in town. When she came out of the one they called the Club Cabaret, I could tell by the expression on her face that she'd gotten the word from someone. The word took us into the old warehouse district down by the river, a section of town where the cops like to walk their beats in pairs. By the end of the week, Cassandra had turned up as a car hop in a drive-in on the west side of town. Her job there had been rigged by Packard through the big man Packard was delivering for. The drive-in had been staked out by the police department for the past month on suspicion that marijuana was being sold under the food trays. Packard's boss turned out to be a small-time racketeer and bunco artist by the name of Al Stutzman, and now Cassandra was on his payroll, too. Stutzman spent 2 or 3 days observing the way Cassandra handled the drive-in trade. Then came the pitch. Cassandra's job in the drive-in was only a proving ground for bigger things. A few days later, Stutzman set the girl up in a swank apartment in the neighborhood of Park Union High School. When Cassandra moved in, we planted spotters in the apartment house across the way and kept the place under surveillance day and night. Cassandra had been recruited by Stutzman to expand his traffic in marijuana. Along with the apartment, Cassandra was given the job of holding open house and playing hostess to the teenage bop crowd from the neighboring high school. But Cassandra was finding it hard to keep her mind on business. The junk Stutzman had given her to sell to the fast crowd from Park Union presented too much of a personal temptation. Cassandra's weakness for the merchandise she was given to retail periodically put the skids under Stutzman's caper at the apartment house. But in between the girl's recurrent breakdowns, business was carried on as usual. By the end of the month, we had most of the necessary information we needed to pin a conviction on Stutzman. At 4:54 on November the 31st, the apartment house stakeout rang in the code 2 we'd been standing by for. At 5:09, we closed in for the kill. The raid on Cassandra's tea party miscarried. The minute we hit the front door, someone in the kitchen flipped the switch on the garbage disposal unit, pulverizing the critical evidence we needed for a conviction. We'd fumbled badly, but we hadn't lost the game yet. We still had Cassandra. If she were handled the right way, the Lee girl was a possible for state's evidence against Stutzman. Down at headquarters that evening, I could see that Cassandra wasn't going to buy the reform program that I was outlining for consideration. She knew the evidence we had implicating her was, for the most part, circumstantial. But on the other hand, the girl was smart enough to realize that what little we did have was just enough to make things uncomfortable. She finally expressed a certain willingness to cooperate. I assured Cassandra that she would be given every consideration if she would consent to full cooperation with the department. This, of course, meant not only giving testimony against Stutzman, but also any information she might possess now or in the future concerning other narcotics violations within our jurisdiction. Cassandra wasn't fooling anyone but herself. Addicts have but one loyalty, to themselves and their all-consuming drug habits. When circumstances threaten their freedom to pursue those habits, behavior is motivated by the most primitive of animal instincts, self-preservation and survival of the fittest. The rest of Cassandra's cooperation with the department amounted to an occasional tip-off leading to the arrest of several teenage gangs around town that were still playing the dangerous game. Cassandra's probation period expired on the 1st of May of the following year. Regarded now as a criminal by unsympathetic parents, it was no great surprise when Cassandra disappeared from home again on the day following her release. Required to live in the home of her mother and stepfather during the probation period, Cassandra had evidently found little change in the home environment, which had compelled her initial flight into the world of drugs and dreams. It was sometime during that first week in May that Cassandra's path crossed that of a young woman paying the highest possible tariff in terms of the narcotic route of escape, the heroin addict, suffering from the preliminary symptoms of narcotic withdrawal. The young woman to whom Cassandra was being the Good Samaritan was one Margot Rossi, the wife of a young hood serving a long term in the state penitentiary. Margot had once made